There we go. As Stuart mentioned, my name is Ryan Adams. I am the Director of Business Development here at Silfab, which means I get involved in a lot of aspects. I already recognized quite a few names here on the in the chat section. So to those that I've met, hello, and to those that I haven't, hopefully I can paint a bit of a picture for you about who Silfab is, what our team does here, what we're planning in the future, and how that may help you in the pursuit of sales and stability in this crazy world that we call solar in our lives. So I've been doing this about 7 years. I was Solar Edge for 6+ years before that. I was in distribution and utility scale development before that. I've been having fun on the solar coaster for many years, as to many of you as well. So thanks for joining us today. We will get into the meat and potatoes of it here. And yeah, as Stuart mentioned, just add your comments, questions to the chat, and if I can see them, I will ask a few of them as we go. If not, we'll do them at the Q&A at the end. So let's just first start with here. I'll turn the camera off so that I don't lose bandwidth as well. Starting with kind of who is Silfab, where we come from, where are we going type of scenario, right? So the lineage of Silfab companies really has been around since 1981. The original founders of Silfab Americas have been involved in PV supply chain and gateway for PV grade silicon, module, utility scale development, to R&D, just all sorts of things on the PV supply chain side of things globally. In 2010, they put some money into what is now Silfab Americas. It was a modest investment back then to start a production line in that top right-hand blue dot you see there, Toronto, Canada. Small production facility to do a few things. One, to satisfy some domestic content needs in the Canadian market at the time, and then also to be an OEM for all of the brands hoping to have domestic content across North America. When that was started, there really wasn't any PV manufacturing capacity really across North America, and so you weren't able to kind of take from existing experience. Really, a lot of it came from the original founders and the automotive side of things, right? So this is why the company is really founded on high levels of automation in our facilities, ISO certified facilities, low parts per million defect rate, all the things that you'd really see in a high-tech automotive industry is really what was brought into the Silfab Americas side of things. As we grew and grew our reputation, started doing OEM for many of the large tier ones that you know today, we really kind of outdid, once we'd maximized the capacity in the Toronto facility, realized that we needed to be south of the border as well, because a lot of our business was moving in that direction. We bought a company called iTech in Bellingham, Washington, so the upper left-hand corner of the map there, which now says Burlington. We took over that facility, doubled the capacity there, and even outgrew that within about a year, so 2017, 2018, and then started looking for a larger facility, and that's what we now reside in Burlington, Washington. So that is a 250,000 square foot facility where we have over 1 gigawatt of module assembly capacity. A lot of the R&D, a lot of the management side of things sits also in that facility. So now we're kind of spread between 2 different facilities back in 2018, 2019 on either side of the country, and continuing to grow. As you can see now, there's the bottom right-hand side of the map in Fort Mill, South Carolina. As we again kind of outdid the demand that we had in the market for Silfab, we took on the next project. This is a 800,000 square foot facility that can house another 1.2 gigs of module assembly and 2 gigawatts of cell capacity in that facility. And so that is a very exciting time for us right now. That is what we are building out, and this month is very exciting, is that we will start running cells and modules as we speak. That facility is being turned on and starting to roll out product. So really look at ourselves as, the domestic brand, that we are a privately held, North American owned and operated company with international supply chain connections. The original investors are still board members, not really involved necessarily in the equity raise to continue to grow facilities, but still guiding and providing consultation on the international supply chain side of things. The equipment that was in the Toronto facility has subsequently been moved down to the Fort Mill, South Carolina facility. So we are now manufacturing as of the mid last year. We are manufacturing 100% of all modules, and that's from residential through small commercial, large commercial, and into the utility. 100% of all of those modules are manufactured in the US between Burlington, Washington, and Fort Mill, South Carolina. So what does it take to do that? Well, over 1,000 employees and growing. That Fort Mill facility requires hundreds and hundreds more, I think 600 or 800 more when all said and done at full capacity. And that really includes everything, right? So not only do we have competitors obviously that assemble and do some of their sales and service here, but our entire company is based here, right? The management, the executive decision making is here. The R&D team sits amongst you in your time zone. Making sure that our product is designed for the environmental conditions that we experience in North America, right down to the sales, service, and support, the after sales support, the teams that you need to work with if something goes wrong. Again, they are sitting scheduled in different time zones across the country so that they're accessible, right? So as we continue to grow out, there's more facilities to come as the demand grows and as the industry stabilizes and continues to grow. But that's kind of our progress that we've made over the last kind of 15 years. I think we are the longest standing module manufacturer in North America, and right now sitting at just over 2 gigawatts of module and 1 gigawatt of cell, with the room to grow. And we'll touch a bit more on that in the next couple slides. So a couple points here of kind of the why Silfab, right? The laundry list, I guess, of so now you know kind of who we are, where we came from. Why would you choose to partner with Silfab, right? And each of these is kind of a differentiating factor, and I think you'll see that's the crux of my presentation today and how the team operates. Is we've got to be different than many of our competitors that do a low cost, high volume, in some cases low quality, low efficiency, OEM based Southeast Asian manufacturing. We want to do everything here. We want to be different. We want to have a better warranty, a better product build, better sales service support. We want to have just a better company all around. That's really what the whole background of the company was based on. And obviously at the top of that pyramid is the financial stability. So we're 15 years in, working on positive EBITDA every year, reinvesting into here, right? So the money doesn't go back overseas. It is reinvested back here into further R&D development, further production capacity, and cycled into that environment. So, making those sound fiscal decisions allows us to be profitable and allows us to be bankable, so that we're on all the major AVLs, as you'll see when you're looking at the loan and lease AVLs. For any commercial financing, we're on major military bases, we're on VA hospitals, we're on Nike headquarters, we're on a whole litany of really high profile projects, because the company has made the smart decisions to make money when we were building modules instead of just building things to store in a warehouse. And that, I think, differentiates us from a lot of our competitors. The R&D side of things, right? We've got to be proud of what we build, and we need to differentiate and give you, the installer, the salesperson, the integrator, something to talk about at the either dining room table or boardroom table. So we have always been one step ahead than many of our competitors in whether it's efficiency, whether it's technology, right? We're the only ones building a back contact technology. You'll see a press release that went out today. We just bought more patents on, really kind of cleared up a whole bunch of additional patents on the back contact side of things to make our elite product even better. We continue, we lead the charge, and we're first of all N-type in residential, commercial, and utility. So providing a better, more high-tech, high power density, low degradation solution to all projects of all sizes. Higher efficiencies for better nameplates, all those type of things. The team works on, the US based team that is working in your time zone, making sure that you've got the best, latest technology to mention to homeowners and business owners as to why they would choose to partner with you and subsequently Silfab. The supply chain side of things, so I guess again being slightly different in that we've always built here. We have always had to have a clear, above board ethical supply chain to get product into the United States. Very different than manufacturing product overseas. When a finished good is brought in, it's a little bit tougher to tell where things came from. It is sad and disappointing, I guess, to me, that ultimately there does need to be code or policy, administrative pieces that govern our decisions in this direction. But I guess it is nice that others are now need to adhere to the same type of ethical policies that have always been pivotal in our supply chain decisions at Silfab. And the manufacturing side of things, again, touch base on the high levels of automation coming from the automotive side of things, but also just doing just-in-time manufacturing has always been, for 15 years, we don't build and fill warehouses. Everything we build has a PO attached to it so that we can adjust with commodity fluctuations, so that if pricing's going down or up, we're not sitting on a warehouse full of product and having to lose money and decrease our overall financial stability. That has allowed us, as kind of the original David versus Goliath story, to remain competitive and continue to grow to be 10-15% of the residential market and a considerably larger portion these days on the commercial and small utility side of things, as a privately held North American operation, is just doing sound fiscal policy, manufacturing to order, so that we can slow down production if we need to when demand is not there. Can't hear anything now, Ben says. Can someone else chime in and just see if that's just Ben that can't hear? Nothing has changed. Devin says I can hear. Everyone else says I can hear. Sorry, Ben. Everyone else says all good. So here's just a few reasons as to the why Silfab. Why would you partner with Silfab? As to the differences that we can offer versus many of the other products out there. Another bit on this, domestic. We'll just touch base, just domestic in the whole, right? So I'll hit all these up. So being domestic was always a benefit in that it was mostly warm and fuzzy, though. So you could tell the company owner or Jane and John Smith, American homeowner, we're supporting a domestic company. They've got domestic labor. They've got domestic ownership, and that's all staying here. But there never really was a huge financial incentive to it. Now there is both sticks and carrots, right? So supply chain compliance, right? This is the UFLPA that I think probably none of us hoped there would need to be policy for, but there is, because unfortunately there are some poor decisions made at some areas in the world. Something that's always been key to us is that ESG side of things and being green in green. Now there's obviously code to prevent UFLPA and competitors of ours still being held at the border, not being able to get product in. Anti-circumvention, this is the ADCVD that has been a part of our lives, a part of the alphabet soup that we all deal with on a daily basis, targeting those 4 countries and likely going beyond that, because they are being used as proxies, kind of a surrogate to route maybe Chinese-made product out and avoid those tariffs. They're now being tariffed as well. Again, something that doesn't impact our assembly because we're doing it all here. Therefore, we can be free and clear of that and be protected from that dumping side of things by being able to run our business legitimately and hopefully making a profit doing it here with American labor and American insurance and all the American overhead costs that we have. Then, so there's the handful of sticks, right, where the policy deters foreign manufacturing or foreign importation. Then there's the carrot side of things that obviously was introduced with the IRA. Now, this was kind of a happy circumstance to us. We already had the business plan to build out and further integrate the supply chain and bring cell production to the Americas. The IRA was then introduced, which was perfect timing, allowed us to expedite the capital raise to build out the South Carolina facility. And now that was obviously a couple of years ago. It does take a couple of years to build a multi-$100-million facility. Anyone that's been involved with it knows that there's lots of planning, permitting projects in the work and all the civil engineering that's required to get these projects off the ground. But we are there, and this month marks a pretty big event in our trajectory to bring stateside all of the supply chain side of things. So we'll touch base a bit more on the domestic content, the IRA side of things. And then just the sustainability piece with just general in the ESG context. I think we've always had kind of a leg up in that we have access to recycling campaigns. We have access to environmental standards that are sound, that we feel are important to the longevity of our environmental and our globe, I guess, in general. A lot of these aren't necessarily held with such high esteem in other countries. And so by doing 100% of our business here, we're very easily able to involve ourselves in strategic agreements in this recycling side of things, the fair and equitable living wage side of things, all of that emboldens the ESG movement, and really a lot of major institutional money is now tied to the ESG side of things. And so given that it was always a major building block in our business. Again, we're very well positioned to help anyone along that side of things. So here is the Fort Mill, South Carolina facility. It is around 800,000 square feet. Is a large building. It takes about 20 minutes to walk from one side to the other. The civil engineering is done for up to 2 gigawatts of cell manufacturing. That's why I have a couple asterisks there. 1 gigawatt is landed and connected and powered and starting to run through. We also have then 1.2 gigawatts of module assembly capacity in that building as well. So that facility, when fully ramped up, will have 800 new jobs in that area, and can add to U.S. policy administration's interest in bringing stateside more of the energy infrastructure to control a bit of our own destiny on that energy mix side of things. So a big step for Silfab, a big step for the industry, a big step for administrative the policy side of things. And something to note about this facility: when you're building a new facility, it just made no sense for us to go with a PERC P-type product, right? Which has kind of been one of the main cell technologies, or the main cell technology for the last 10, 15 years in its various derivations, but really a dying breed. And now a majority of the global supply chain has gone to the N-type side of things, and we'll touch base on the technology side a little bit more. But just an all-around better product for efficiency, for degradation, for overall operational specs. N-type, it just takes a massive leap forward. So this facility is 100% N-type cell production, so that you recognize all of these benefits of N-type technologies in your projects. So, looking at one quick question, a big question for everyone who wants to know is when. That facility is starting to operate this month. It has all of the module equipment and cell equipment in it, and it is starting to run through samples and strings as we speak. So again, 1.5 to 2 years of progress for us. No, there is not 800 people already hired. That is the total that will be in that facility at the when it's fully operational. All right. So we'll pause here for a little bit and do a quick poll just to kind of understand why everyone that's on here is on here, what you're hoping to understand most from today's talk, and hopefully I can concentrate a little bit more on those areas moving forward so that everyone has the information that they're looking for. So we'll give it 20 or 30 seconds here just to see where everyone's looking at. And domestic content options seems to be taking the lead, but closely followed by product roadmap. And turns out not many people are interested in the general background. All right, we'll let it hit 100 answers and take it from there. All right. So it looks like obviously a big chunk of it is the domestic content side of things, and I have a specific section for that. And product roadmap is a close second, and that is what we are jumping into next year. So we will cover off all of these questions over the next handful of slides here. So appreciate the feedback on that, and let's move forward so that we allow some time for a question and answer period at the end. So this is kind of how we break down our roadmap and the kind of the sections of our module production. We're mainly going to talk about 2 of these today, but I'll leave the third one up there. So Silfab Prime is our main run rate residential product. It's a front contact N-type product built in the Washington facility today, and will be the main product this year. Silfab Elite, the one in the middle here, is a back contact technology that we've been building for 4 years-ish now. Premium technology with higher efficiencies, better degradations, better aesthetics, better temperature coefficients due to the kind of heat dissipation of the copper backsheet. But we're not going to go into that today because we are currently in between generations of Silfab Elite. The acquisition of that patent, the announcement that went out today, is a big part of that. Some of the DOE funding that's part of that. So we are actively working on bringing the next generation Silfab Elite to the table, which is going to be a game changer again, but it's going to take us a little bit longer to get that to the table. And so we will keep the industry apprised of progress on that side of things. So today we're going to talk really mostly about Silfab Prime, and then on the right-hand side there, Silfab Commercial, which really kind of encompasses 3 different products, kind of a small commercial, a medium to large commercial, and a small utility. Really the crux of them, they're all the same building block. They're all an M10 sized cell with an N-type technology, so that you're getting the benefits of the better degradation and better efficiencies and etc. So really, the Silfab Prime and Silfab Commercial are all based on the same building block. So all of our production lines can run all of these modules, and all of them have the same width and the same cell technology in them, so that we can adjust our demand up and down based on SKU, based on what your demand is. So that's what kind of separates them, really, is the silver frame and the white backsheet. Obviously, is the aesthetic difference, and does change the operation of it a little bit. Sorry, I should say transparent bifacial backsheet, and then all black frame, cell, and backsheet on the residential side of things. Where they're all the same, though, is the level of due diligence that goes into them, right? Just having our R&D team and labs beat the living crap out of them, put them through all the advanced life cycle testing, all the chambers for, these are kind of your 6 main testing criteria. And then once we've done that to all the components and all the finished modules to make sure that our team is comfortable with the outcome, then we send it off, obviously, to the third-party nationally recognized laboratories, PVAL, RETC, etc., and they do all of their third-party testing so that we can be, they can qualify the top product, right? And so top performer is one of the classifications. And I encourage everyone to look at, when someone mentions that they're a top performer, make sure that they are top performer in all of these categories, right? So you can be a top performer in just mechanical durability. It means you build a big, thick, bulky module, but maybe the rest of the performance isn't there. We put in all of our modules for all of this testing and come out on top, and competing with all of the global powerhouses in solar R&D, and that's really a testament to our domestic R&D team, the guys and girls that sit in our facilities, in our labs in the US, and run all this testing, so that we can live by these modules for a long period of time to come. So now jumping into each one of these, oops. Oh, sorry, I hit the wrong screen there. So jumping on to a little bit more in depth on the Prime. So Silfab Prime, the residential kind of workhorse module this year, it is currently running at a 440 positive tolerance, putting it at a 22.6% module efficiency. So if you think about where PERC technologies ended off a little bit, well, some are still building a bit of PERC. Our last PERC production was a year and a half ago. The highest that we got to after 10 years of R&D and tweaking and playing, with all of the technology was 20.7% module efficiency. And here we are, first generation of N-type at 22.6. Right, so that's a major jump in overall module efficiency and power density that you get to bring to every system just by moving from P-type to N-type, and the overall production cost basis of N-type is getting better by the day, and is actually being built at a lower cost than what PERC was a year or two ago, and you get all the bells and whistles of N-type. As I've mentioned, so all of our modules will be a common width, right? So you'll see the 44.5 inches. That is common between the 440, the 530, the 580, and the 630. And you will start to see that really being pretty common throughout the industry, as most module manufacturers, right from the ingot, the wafer, the cell side, standardize on M10. There is a bit of M12 out there, but M10 hopefully is for everyone's sake, where the industry stops for a little while so that we can have some stability in module size. It would help us. It would help yourselves on the installer side. It would help everyone involved if we could just stabilize on this. And so it does seem the M10 is going to be kind of a place of stability for the next couple of years at least, and that will get you that kind of 44.5 inch width. And then something about, Silfab has always had this 25-year product warranty and 30-year performance. And the important part about the performance is the 0.3% degradation, right? So your average your average degradation with PERC is 0.6, 0.65, 0.7% per year. With N-type, we're already at 0.3 and hoping to make improvements on that. So what that yields is, after 25 years, you're still producing 91% of the overall nameplate capacity in a warrantable condition. Now, our warranty is 30 years linear, but I always memorize the 25-year because that seems to be where most of the rest of the industry is. But that 0.3% continues on linear down to the 30-year mark as well. And you can see kind of all the, so I see in the thread something about BABA. So we will touch base on BABA in 3 slides, but yes, everything in 2025, there's an exemption so that US assembled is BABA compliant. And because 100% of everything we build is in the US, therefore all of our modules are BABA compliant this year. But there will be a change to BABA in the future once there is more domestic supply chain capacity. So here is the smaller version of Silfab Commercial. This is a 530XM. It's a bifacial product that is being sold into the market today. So this product actually has, the backsheet is, it kind of looks like it's got a white backsheet. It actually has what's called textured or pattern. So there's actually a white grid pattern that is in between the cells. And then in behind the cell is actually a clear, transparent backsheet. And so what that does is it keeps the front side efficiency high. Right, so because there is reflection off of in between the cells, and you can then absorb that by the cell beside it, by having those white strips in between the cells, but then a clear backsheet behind it, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're keeping the front side efficiency and yielding a 530 watt front side, but then you've got the backside, the bifaciality of the backside, and everything reflecting off of TPO membrane, off of ground, snow, whatever it happens to be. You can absorb that off the back as well. So again, that 44.5-inch wide mark will be common throughout. And I think something very different than what you'll see in maybe some of the other commercial products out there is that we extend our 25-year product and 30-year performance right through our commercial lineup as well. For us, it's the same levels of R&D and quality scrutiny that's gone into it. It's the same BOM components. Therefore, we're happy offering all of this product at the same warranty moving forward. Nothing crazy or wildly innovative about this. The 580 is an extra row of cells longer, or 2 rows of half cells. Obviously applicable for larger commercial rooftops, or once you get on the ground mount fixed axes or tracker side of things, you want to start reducing that EBOS and tracker side of things. Obviously, having a larger module starts to help on that side of things. But again, a bunch of the similarities with that width profile and that longer performance, so that you get the best of both worlds, right? You get the high power density, and I do encourage you, if you haven't modeled with N-type technologies yet, modeled production, LCOE, ROI, whatever financial metric you're using, model it with the production values of these modules, and you'll notice a considerable difference in the overall LCOE because of both production and also because higher power density means you need less of your electrical bases of system, you need less racking, all of those additional components, you lay less modules on the roof, right? So I do encourage you to do that, or reach out to our product team and look at some of the materials that they've worked on as well. And now I have this one in here. It wasn't in the picture, but this is a product that's starting to be built at the tail end of Q3. Again, extra row of cells or 2 rows of half cells longer. All the same, silver frame, textured backsheet, same warranty, same width. But obviously for the ground mount application side of things, as we move more into the kind of community solar gardens and that side of things. That said, CED does have a bunch on order for next year, and that they are seeing lots of demand for larger modules as well. So it is available through all facets of our sales channel, and it goes by the same level of scrutiny and testing and quality control, obviously, as all of the rest of our products. So here's just a handful of some of the high-profile projects we've worked on the last couple of years. Being used in a bunch of different environments. And then I think we're going to jump to another poll here, if we could. just when you're thinking about what your customer in particular is looking for, or most generally looking for, what is it these days? Is it the availability of just having something that's consistent? Is it the technology? Is it the engineer type? Is it the price? Just trying to get the lowest overall cost to make the project happen. Interested in seeing what of our people who have joined today, what their main interest is. And then we're going to jump into everyone's favorite topic, which is domestic content. So far, price is strangely number one, and availability and technology fairly close behind that. We're over 100 answers, so a good representative end value here. So looks about half suggest that price is really what the customer's greatest interest is, and then availability and technology being close behind those. Okay, so we're going to touch base on 236 here, so I can get a little bit of Q&A at the end. So getting into the domestic content, which is what everyone, majority of people suggested they were hoping to understand. So I will preface this portion of the presentation with the concept that I am not a lawyer, I'm not an accountant, I am not licensed to provide any information, nor am I a legal or a policy expert to be making widespread insinuations about the intent of this code. But this is our best guess at kind of just an overview of the topic and what we are building for various use cases, so that you are our partners and prospective partners have something to go to the market with. Right? So it seems maybe silly to some, but with the questions that we receive on a daily basis, I want to start just from here, which is because I get a lot of questions. We get a lot of questions of, do you build things domestically? Do you have domestic assembly? Do you build here? And there's two really big differences there, and they apply to different scenarios, right? So we have always had domestic assembly. We build 100% of our modules here. Everything is built in the US. That has always been, BAA compliant, ARA compliant, the warm and fuzzies of, that it's domestically built. Historically, we have built that with non-domestic components. That is changing, obviously, with the IRA. BABA required, so Build America, Buy America, or Buy America, Build America, whichever orientation that's in, had the requirement that it also required 55% domestic content. And BABA is kind of the next level of BAA requiring government funding. And because there wasn't enough of the domestic supply chain to actually provide commercially available volumes of this domestic content, there was a 1-year exemption written for BABA compliance that just needs to be domestic assembly. So if you're working on BABA projects and need to understand that, we have a document that references that applicable code, and that all of our modules today are assembled here, therefore would all be BABA compliant. And we'll see what they do in 2026, whether they feel there's enough domestic content available to then have a percentage required. So now domestic content, which is coming to everyone's world in the last year or two, requires that obviously the components, the bits and pieces that go into the module are actually built, assembled module, put together here in the Americas, right? So you're bringing the raw materials in and building those products here. And that is what Silfab has been working on for the last year and a bit. We went at it a bit differently than many others. We went in and did all of the kind of advanced life cycle testing, quality control testing on all of the constituent parts that we could source in the Americas, even if we wanted to, we're going to use them or not. Got those supply agreements set up so that if policy changed and we needed to adjust the percentages of domestic content within the module, we had all of those bits and pieces that were available to mix and match and kind of make those various modules, the light domestic SKUs that I'll touch base on in 2 slides, having the ability to juggle between those to meet different use cases, right? So domestic assembly versus domestic content. We've always had domestic assembly. We are now integrating, where necessary, domestic content pieces to meet your IRA needs. So Now the IRA then breaks the IRS tables, break the module down into these various bits and pieces, right? So you've probably seen a diagram like this, right? Your frame and your glass and your cells are pretty obvious. They're viewable from the front, but then you've got 2 layers of encapsulant, which is really a glue that binds the whole laminate together, and your back sheet, protecting it from the back, and the junction box pulling the power off the back of the module and relaying it in series through that circuit. Then you've got a bunch of other bits and pieces that adhesives and buttons and that are a part of it that aren't as visible, but obviously integral in the overall operation of that module. And all of those components have then been added into the table to meet IRA domestic content requirements, that you have to have a certain percentage of these that is sourced from American supply chain. Right. So the IRA adder came in. So what is it? It's trying to bring domestic supply chain into the Americas, so that we're more in control of our energy mix and the generation of the power in our grids, right? And if we do that, there's then an extra 10% tax credit available for those projects on top of the 30% ITC. It qualifies for those that are doing a commercial application, right? So a commercial project, i.e. on the top of a big box store or a big utility, where a commercial entity is transacting. It also then applies to commercially owned and operated residential installs. So i.e. the third party owned, the TPO, the lease providers, that can also be transacted as a commercial entity. Therefore, that is applicable and can get this 10% domestic adder. The threshold right now is at 40%. It was the part of the code was written that would add 45% this year, 50% next year. The ITC was kind of botched a little bit, that portion of it. And so that requires a legislative change. We're still waiting to see kind of what the time frame of that may be. But the design is that they're going to be increasing that percentage requirement at the project level, so that as more supply chain becomes available, that us, manufacturers here and you as installers in the market and CEDs, our distribution partners, are obliged to utilize that domestic content supply chain so that we employ more in the manufacturing side of things in the Americas. How do you determine whether it qualifies? That is where my job ends and your job begins in speaking to your legal counsel or your accountants to make sure that you are procuring and receiving enough guidance to make sure that you're comfortable that your taxation will be benefited from this IRA. It's not something that the manufacturer nor CED Green Tech can guide on. So here's the table. We're not going to stop and dissect this at all, but just the bits and pieces. You'll notice really just the top line is probably the most important part, that the cell is really a major component, obviously, of every system. It is the largest portion of our cost stack, and it really represents, as you can see, anywhere, based on these tables, from 31 to 53% of the overall cost stack of the entire project is actually represented by that polysilicon, by that solar cell that's in the module. And so by building those here and some of these various components, we are able to contribute considerable amounts, depending on how much you need. And that is the next slide that I assume everyone is looking for. How much you're looking for in the project. It's kind of a choose your own adventure. You have to decide, whether it's rooftop or ground mount, which inverter is being used, what other domestic content components you have to combine with these Silfab modules, and that then try to achieve above that required total project content. So here is my best attempt at succinctly kind of putting, the use cases, defining the use cases, and ultimately the SKUs that we are building this year based on the current tables, right? So there was the original IRS tables released in 2024, have since been replaced on January 16th, which came into effect early April, that have changed this a little bit. This is based on the 2025 tables, and moving forward, the various use cases that you see in the industry, right? So the product, we can really build all of our products with various levels of domestic content if there is demand for them. If there's very little demand for a certain SKU, we likely won't, and that will be detailed in that second section. But the Silfab Prime, Silfab the 2 commercial, and even the 630, the small commercial module, small utility module, can be either US assembled. It can be US assembled with light domestic content, i.e. it ends in a suffix -DCA something. And it can be built with high domestic content, which means it ends in the suffix DCB or DCB and then a number if there might be some variants in the future. So a few of these examples, so on the light domestic side of things, this is mostly on the residential side, a little bit on the commercial side as well. So with the current tables, with domestic MLPE and a domestic stick of rail, you kind of fall just short, right? 39 point something of getting over that 40% or 45%. Some TPOs are going to 45%. So that DCA2 is designed for pairing with that. If you don't think or want to use the domestic fasteners, the structural fasteners on the racking side, then there is a solution for you. Use a domestic MLPE, use domestic rail, and this DCA2 version, and that would get you up over 45%. So it even future-proofs that business, or for the TPOs that are already requiring more than 45, you're already there. So we are building the 440 QD that way, and then both the XM and the XM Plus on the commercial side can be built in that DCA2 variant if needed, for commercial rooftop. When you've got a domestic MLPE, then you can also use that. The DCA3, the use case for that is really on the string side of things or on the battery side of things when you've got the domestic content on the battery side, but you need it on the inverter side. So with this one, if you've got full domestic racking, and then most string inverters don't have any domestic content, the pure string guys don't have any domestic content, then you need something that's at or above 15.5%. So that you reach over that 40% threshold, right? So this module, the DCA3, actually reaches 16.2, but the important part, or the crux of it, is that you need to exceed 15.5 plus the racking at 24.5 gets you up over that 40%. That is being built just in the QD, right? So that would be a SIL 440 QD DCA3. That would be the product SKU that you would talk to your colleagues here at GreenTech about availability and timing and et cetera on that product. Would be kind of that 440 QD, and that's the example there, DCA3, and that's for pairing with string inverters in TPO, residential TPO systems. Then the high domestic SKUs, right? Then you get into what we call DCB, or the suffix at the end is -DCB. That includes our domestic cell, and a few bits and pieces of other domestic content are added in that DCB. So it achieves, in some cases, 40 to 70% of the domestic content of the project can be achieved through this DCB module, depending on what type of system you add it with. The kicker on all of these is the timing, availability, and price point. They all have a slightly different availability matrix, and they all have a different price tag, because ultimately as we add more domestic components, you can imagine the cost to us to source domestically versus sourcing from offshore is increased. Therefore, we need to obviously cover that on the price basis through our partners at GreenTech here. Availability on the DCB is the farthest out for sure. So GreenTech has the light domestic SKUs on order through Q3 and Q4. The DCB side of things was sold out in 2024. GreenTech has some of that on order. You'd have to speak with your various representatives to find out if they have any available for you. And we are selling through the 2026 volumes of that domestic cell very quickly. So if you have interest in that for projects in 2026, please speak with your GreenTech reps about getting some of that on order. They understand what is required to have that on order, but it is in very high demand. Obviously, we have 1 gigawatt of capacity, and the civil engineering, all the water, the power, the gas, permitting, everything for a second. And there's really only 1 or 2 other kind of options in the market that are being developed this year. They are all PERC. They are at various stages of completion, and obviously just a lower efficiency with an older technology. So I think we've got a fairly compelling argument, but it is only several gigawatts of total cells for an industry that is installing somewhere between 30 and 40 gigawatts of modules per year. So as an industry, we are still very far away from self-satisfying all of our domestic supply chain needs. So still high demand. If there's of interest, there's interest on the DCB product for next year for either residential or commercial, please reach out to Silfab and Green Tech, and we can sort out that side of things. My last, and I'm at 50 minutes after the hour. I want to get through this quickly so we can leave a handful of minutes. There's probably actually more questions in the chat than I can answer already. So, but just the N-type technology, I want to cover it quickly in kind of 2-3 slides so that everyone hopefully understands really the difference that we're dealing with if it hasn't been explained to you yet. So here's the best, like the artist's rendition of the difference between a P-type cell and an N-type cell and why it yields such better results. So the P-type, which is a positively charged cell with a boron doping, is what we've had for a long time. The big difference here is there's a passivization layer, right? So when sunlight comes in, there's what's called a charge carrier, absorbs that photon of light, and that charge carrier needs to go through that passivization layer, and there's actually physical holes that it needs to go through. And so kind of think of like a highway is the best analogy. And you've got a traffic jam. There's a certain number of cars that can fit through a highway, and that's really what's capping the overall efficiency of a P-type cell. And why really efficiencies of that technology have kind of tapered off now is that we've reached that upper threshold of the efficiency we can gain because there's a physical limitation. An N-type cell, which is a negatively charged cell with phosphorus doping on the wafer, that passivization layer is more of a diffuse membrane. So think of just the incoming photons of light absorbed by the charge carriers. They can move through that passivization layer to the contacts without any limitation, any physical limitation. And so that's what's jumped really very quickly from a 20.7, my example earlier, 20.7 to 22.6% efficiency in a module. That quickly is really just that passivization layer and why that kind of hierarchical difference in how the cell is built. And so what does that all mean? Maybe it's over a bunch of our heads. It's mostly over my head as well. But what does it mean to you, the installer, the developer, the salespeople? Is adding 12% efficiency to it means a lot more nameplate, which means two things. One, you can either get way more on a roof. So your permitting costs are the same, your truck roll costs are the same. All of those are fixed, but you get more watts on a roof, means that your overall install price per watt goes down. Or B, when you're only trying to hit a certain nameplate, you need less modules on the roof, right? So you're reducing your overall EBOS cost, you're reducing the overall labor rate because you're only trying to hit a 8 kilowatt system, something like that. And that applies to both residential and commercial. You've got a much higher power density. There's benefits to that in your overall cost structure of installing that system. Another big piece of it's the degradation rate, right? So I mentioned the 0.6% versus 0.7% on the PERC, down to 0.3%. And this is kind of that linear representation of all of that extra power over that 25, 30 years. It's an incredible amount of power. And again, why I encourage you to model the production and the overall LCOE side of things with an N-type technology to really understand the EBOS reduction and the power and the additional power production. And I think you'll find it's worth several pennies a watt equivalent up front by having that additional benefit of the N-type technologies. And the last thing, temperature coefficients, the unsung hero, but really a meaningful impact. When you think about a black asphalt roof in the middle of the summer is a very hot place. Polysilicon has an inverse relationship. When it gets hot, it gets less efficient. So a 21% efficient module that gets hot becomes 20% efficient, 19% efficient. N-type cell technologies have a much better temperature coefficient. Therefore, as they get hotter, they retain more of that efficiency. And again, just more power production over the lifespan of the project is a key component of that overall modeling. So I go through that. I rushed through that to try to leave as much time as we can. We may even forego this poll because I want to get to some of the questions. And I will not get through even half of this. All TopCon in South Carolina, all TopCon everywhere, all N-type, period. All of our facilities, all of our module lines are based on N-type. Are the modules committed to customers? They are committed to customers, yes. one of those customers happens to be the person who's hosting this event and has 100 warehouses scattered across the country filled with Silfab modules ready to sell them to you, Mr. Michael Churchman. So please reach out to GreenTech and ask them about what their availability is. They are a very large strategic partner of ours that have bought modules out through the rest of the year. Hearing safe harbor guidelines your products qualify for. Percentage of safe harbor. Not sure. Sorry, William. I understand the safe harbor guidelines. Safe harbor is in the eye of the beholder. You can safe harbor based on code changes, ITC changes. There is a whole bunch of different stuff to safe harbor based on. So I don't think I can answer that question quickly, easily here. Domestic content percentages. Hopefully, Josh, I answered that question. Expect IRA clawback. Whoa, Gail, that's a huge question. It does not. It appears that 45X, 48E, 48Y, all the 10% adder. It appears most of those are all fairly safe in the initial bill. But things change. It's going through revisions as we speak, so I can't really tell you where that's going to end up. The residential ITC for loans seems to be the most in danger currently, which is called 25D. When should we expect a labor warranty be included? From Brandon, we are not working towards a labor warranty. We work on our defect rates and making sure that you never have to go out there to replace anything, and have not been concentrating on a labor warranty, so have not been working on that. Ross, width in inches, 44.6 on all of the modules. Do elites retain Diamond X pattern time frame elite? That is a good question, Dan. I do not know. That star X pattern that Dan mentioned is kind of a proprietary aspect and amazing aesthetics on that elite. It will be out into 2026 by the time we get patent and everything built into the next elite side of things. So I will put 2026 on it, but I couldn't tell you the time frame quite yet today. Baba, we touched on his first year performance lower than 0.3. Yes, Craig. So there's always a initial blast of Mother Nature's fury. And there's usually a 2%. So I think ours is 2% in the first year, and then it goes 0.3% linear after that. So I think that's pretty common across the industry. Which panels are hail-safe design? We do all the testing for all the UL certifications, which is 1 inch. We've done a whole bunch of additional testing at 1.5 and 2 inch, which isn't part of any certifications, but we have gone through and done a bunch of that. We do use 3.2 mil glass and a backsheet, which is still much more hail resistant than when you go 2 mil glass front and 2 mil glass on the back. I'm not sure if hail safe is actually a trademarked term, so I would be remiss if I were to say something about the hail safe specific component. Commercial NTC 500 watt product availability. Working on that, Anthony. Speak to GreenTech and you will have answers. They are ordering that as we speak. Why not have competitive labor warranty? Brandon wants to know about labor warranty as well. We have never focused on it. It has not been a part of our process, and I don't believe we are working on one at this point in time. Matt, not sure if that's a question or comment. Homeowner, that is a big, long question. Sorry, I can't answer that quick. We've got 1 minute left. Michelle or Penn asks something about TPO rooftop applications. I know our product team has done a ton of work with all of the various C&I rooftop racking companies with load testing and various installations and applications, etc. Reach out to us, reach out to our product team if you've got specific questions on specific compatibilities. Hopefully we can answer those. I think Michelle answered part of that. Freddie's in Puerto Rico. Product roadmap again. Sorry, Eric, I cannot jump back through the product roadmap right now, but this presentation will be shared. The presentation, the content will be shared via a video link that GreenTech will send out. Manufacturers using machinery and build codes, USA will be able to qualify. Carlos, I don't know if that's a question or a comment. But he references the big beautiful bill, of course, which is what everyone's looking at and considering these days. It has left, I think, a fairly bipartisan topic to maintain domestic manufacturing and jobs in all states, purple states. So I don't believe anyone really targeting any of the domestic manufacturing pieces of the bill through the bill. Paperwork. Yes, we have a reliance letter that shows you the various variants or sub SKUs of domestic content that can be circulated through Green Tech with this presentation. Someone's asking for a price point. I wouldn't touch that with a 10-foot pole, my friend Josh. That is where Green Tech comes to play. Yes. The video, this video will be released this through Green Tech. Price per watt, not touching it. What Enphase micro pairs best, Kurt? That depends on your interest in DC overrate. Some people are comfortable at 140, some 130, some 120. I think Enphase really kind of approves almost unlimited DC-DC ratio, but they have a compatibility tool. If you just plug it in, you can decide based on your DC-DC ratio what you're comfortable with. I unfortunately can't answer that question for you. Solar trim aluminum pest barrier. As long as you're not penetrating the frame, it's not really an issue to Silfab, but don't go drilling self-tapping screws through the frame. That, someone wrote never use screws. That is an issue for loading capacity thresholds. Say 1.5 to 2 years to build the 1 gigawatt cell factory from Laura. By the time you get all the permitting and all the design work and all the civil engineering, and yes, a project of this magnitude takes several years. All of the new module and cell capacity that's being added. Module is pretty quick. Module you can probably do a new facility from Greenfield. You're probably a year on modules. Cells is a much larger project, and yes, can take upwards of 2. Ability to build modules. N-type, yes, everything is N-type TopCon. Penn mentioned 25D. Do you have any modules 700 watt capacity plus? No, we do not have anything in the roadmap today. That is really generally, I guess, large utility. We are not a large utility player with only a couple gigawatts. We generally are not getting involved in 500 megawatt projects. If there's another application for a module that big, please do let us know. At this point, 630, which will be a 640 at some point next year, is our biggest. Racking, producing the racking, we display. We do not produce the racking. We are a pure play module manufacturer. We do not, we like to stay in our lane. We are not going to start competing with any of our partners. We are not offering EPC services. We're not selling systems. We are not doing any of those things. We concentrate on 2 things, R&D and operational efficiencies in our plants so that we can stay competitive. That is our game. That has always been for 15 years of building modules here. We will not stray from that. Green Tech, reach out to Green Tech. Someone asked, will the 520 QM discontinue? Yes, the 520 QM stopped being produced in 2024. We have been building nothing but the 530 XM since. It is the same footprint, the exact same physical footprint, but it has a bifacial back sheet, which makes it the XM. Any plans to use recycled material to potentially increase domestic content? Charles, I do not know. That is a great question. I am not on the supply chain or product side of things, so I cannot comment, but I will look into that for a future date. We do have a ESG report that goes out on an annual basis and kind of benchmarks our progress towards all of our ESG goals. Certainly working on that side of things as well. All right. That is the end of the questions, unless there is anyone else that has anything for me. I'm sorry I've gone over by 5 minutes, but I appreciate everyone's time and questions today. Hopefully you're a bit more knowledgeable on the Silfab side of things, and if not, reach out to Green Tech, reach out to us. Lots of resources to utilize, and hopefully answer more questions.